navigating complexity with current reality trees. My name is Vinnie.
And I'm Suzanne. And one of the things that Vinnie and I really love is helping teams and organisations. Oh, is the microphone is the microphone okay for everyone? Yeah. So one of the things that Vinnie and I really love is helping teams and organisations to continue to improve, especially in those complex environments. And that's why we've created this talk, and also our company Outcome Output is to help people navigate that complexity and also give them the tools to do it. There's a little bit about us here, and we always love it if you can connect with us on LinkedIn as well. We love to chat to people there. And I'm going to hand over to Vinnie just to tell you a little bit about what to expect from this talk.
Okay, we're just checking the mic in case the recording is okay. All right, so I'm going to start with a story. It was the summer of 2019. The days were humid, the nights were long. We're not going there. And I was part of a large program team. We kept overrunning our budget. We tried everything from freezing hiring to even stopping travel to our suppliers and our other offices. But it didn't work. Meanwhile, our customers were unhappy. The product was buggy and we thought the testers couldn't test fast enough. So we went to all the other teams and we took their testers instead, and we thought that's going to solve the problem. People were tired. And if you find yourself nodding because you've been in similar situations, you're in the right place. Today, I'm going to talk to you about current reality trees, specifically in the context of complex adaptive systems. And by the end of this talk, you'll realize that we are all part of several complex adaptive systems. And then we'll move on to theory of constraints, also known as TOC or TOC. And one of the tools of the theory of constraints is current reality trees. Now you may say, what is current reality trees, Vinnie? Well, it's quite simply a visual tool that helps you map the cause and effect relationship of your problems and challenges that you may face at a workplace. It helps you identify your root causes so that you can fix the right thing. Not like in my story before. Now, we frequently hear as Agilists, we always say, don't use a framework. The framework's not going to fix your problems. Find your problems. But somehow along the lines, we did not communicate the how to the organizations. Yeah? And that's where current reality trees comes in. We've used it, it works, we're passionate about it, and we want to share it with you. So after that, we're going to build a current reality tree, and we'll share some practical tips, because the both of us made a lot of mistakes. And we're going to share that with you to make it easier for you so that you can go back and try this as well. So before we build our tree, I feel it's helpful to set the stage. What is continuous improvement in a complex adaptive system? Now, we're a believer that not one size fits all. So it's good to have these tools in your toolkit. And you might be familiar with one or even all of them. We've got the famous Deming cycle, PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Deming later changed the check to study. We've got retrospectives, and Suzanne is going to tell you what the challenges are with using retrospectives. Experiments. Framing something as an experiment, it just seems a bit less daunting, does it not? And finally, we have theory of constraints, which is especially helpful in complex adaptive systems. Now, this slide is going to help you put our talk into context, because we've got a lot of new terminology here today. And as you can see, current reality trees is just a piece of the puzzle. We're barely scratching the surface. We only have 30 minutes, but it's enough to get you excited. Don't worry about taking photos. You are going to get a PDF of the slide. We've got this cheat sheet for you to help you. And Suzanne and I will be at the marketplace today if you have any questions after this. So, we promised you animals. Suzanne has something special in store for you.
Thank you, Vinnie. So I'm going to show you one of the most beautiful examples of a complex adaptive system. So just sit back and relax as I play this video clip. So I could probably just sit and listen to that for a few more minutes, but in the interest of time, so if you've not come across that before, that was a murmuration of starlings, and they make these beautiful shapes in the sky. And scientists often debate why do they make these shapes. One of the theories is that it helps them to find food. Another theory is that it can help protect from predators. And another one is just that they're simply social animals. But what do we actually mean by a complex adaptive system? So I'm going to just break it down into these really simple components. So first of all, what is a system? A system is simply a set of parts that's interconnected to achieve a purpose. So the starlings are an amazing example of that. They're interconnected, the parts are individual birds, and we've just talked about the purpose of these birds. Another example that you're probably all familiar with is a car. So a car is an example of a system. It's got lots of parts, they're interconnected, and it's hopefully going to get you from A to B. Next, let's take a look at complex. So when we have a complex system, we can't actually predict the behaviour of the overall system. Even if we look at the individual parts, we cannot predict that. So the starlings, again, a great example of this. There's no way that we can predict the shapes that they make in the sky. Even if we looked at one of the starlings, it would be impossible for us. On the other hand, though, a car is not an example of a complex system. As long as we have somebody with the knowledge and skills about mechanics, they can tell us the outcome of these interconnected parts. That is what we call a complicated system. And finally, adaptive. So adaptive systems can adapt their behaviour to the environment, to the surroundings. Again, the starlings can do this. If a hawk came into the area or another predator, they would change their shape. And also our organisations, the teams, the organisations that we work in are a really good example of a complex adaptive system. Just think back to COVID, the pandemic, when we all had to adapt to working from home to still achieve the purpose of the organisation. So here are a few more examples, and you can probably see here that you're part of these systems, you interact with them on a daily basis. One of my favourite ones is the human body. It's actually a system of systems, digestive system, nervous system, cardiovascular system, all working together to achieve that purpose of keeping us alive. So retrospectives, these are one of my favourite tools. Vinnie touched on them briefly earlier. I absolutely love them. I love to introduce them to teams as a practice when they're new to Agile. But I often do find challenges with running retrospectives, and some of you might be familiar with these challenges. The first one is we often find things that are out with our control, so things that we can't change. Our teams talk about these, but they can't actually do anything to change them. Often we find ourselves pressed for time. Have you ever been in that last 5 or 10 minutes of a retro and you're frantically trying to think of what's the improvement that I'm going to make to fix this really complex problem? And we end up with just a sticking plaster solution that scratches the surface and doesn't really address the root cause. Now, I absolutely love retros, but I think if you find yourself running into these problems, it might be time to take another tool and put that into your tool set. And that's where I want to introduce you to theory of constraints. Put your hand up if you've used theory of constraints before. So I can see a few hands there. So you're probably familiar with the book, The Goal. It's very famous. And Eli Goldratt, the author of the book and the father of theory of constraints. I just want to tell you a little story about how I discovered theory of constraints. So just over 10 years ago, I worked at a company called Skyscanner, based in Edinburgh. You might have heard of them. And I was really fortunate to join when there was just over 100 people. And when I left, there was 1,500 people. And as you can probably imagine, it was painful growing. Processes that worked really well for us would stop working completely. And we used theory of constraints to try to help us face these challenges. I remember our release happened, the website release happened every 6 weeks. It was painful, it was slow, it took dozens of people, it was always full of drama. Our chief operating officer was really frustrated by this, and he actually one day decided to send all the engineers home with a copy of the goal and asked them not to come back to the office until they'd read it. He then got everybody to down tools. He said no more features, nothing new on the website apart from critical fixes, until we really understood where our bottleneck, where our constraint is. So we mapped out the process for the release, and we used the theory of constraints, 5 focusing steps, to understand where the bottlenecks were. If we fast forward a couple of years, we got to the stage where teams were releasing on a daily basis, and there was no drama. It was just a natural thing that happened every day, and that was a big thanks to the theory of constraints. So the theory of constraints isn't just about bottlenecks, there's also another set of tools. So Vinnie is now going to introduce you to one of them, one of our favourite ones, the current reality trees.
Thank you, Suzanne. So what you see here is a visual representation that is mapping the cause and effect chain in a system. At the top, you have something that's called an undesirable effect. Okay? So this is a simple structure of the tree. And what you do is you keep asking why. You keep going why, similar to the 5 why theories. And then you will arrive at the intermediate effects. And you keep going why, as you peel back the layers of symptoms until you arrive to one or more root causes. And when you arrive there, it will answer, why is the system failing to meet our expectation? Yeah? So, as I said, this is a simplified version. In reality, trees are pretty complex. These are some real examples of current reality trees. And as you can see, you don't need any fancy tools. All you need is good old Post-its or sticky notes, maybe a whiteboard and a marker, or you could use digital tools like Lucid or Miro or even Mural. Now, Suzanne has intentionally blurred out the stickies on the examples, just so that we're not airing the dirty laundry of the organizations that we have worked with. We've used current reality trees for an array of different problems that we have, and here are some examples. Suzanne mentioned one of them while she was at Skyscanner: organizational cultural issues, getting management buy-in to invest in addressing tech debt, improving the recruitment process, or even finding out why our OKR process rollout didn't work as planned. And then you have AI implementation, which is such a big buzz. So make sure that you get to your root cause so that you know that you're fixing the right thing. Now I know you're all getting excited and you all want to learn how to build a current reality tree. Yeah? Yeah. You're ready to go. We promised you parachuting cats, right? Not yet. Not quite. Okay? We feel that it's really important to clarify what an undesirable effect is. Because when we do play the video of parachuting cats, we want you to identify the undesirable effects. So, an undesirable effect, UDE, is pronounced UDI. Would you all like to say it together with me? UDI. Perfect. Okay. It sits at the top structure of the tree, right at the top. And what it tells you is that something might be amiss in the system. It's the first indication to tell you that it is something that really exists, it is negative, and it is happening now, not something that you feel might happen or something that happened last quarter. It's happening now. So when Suzanne and I usually have our one-on-ones or retrospectives, we find that people typically don't identify the undesirable effects first. So I'm going to show you an example. Suzanne, can you tell me what an undesirable effect is?
Well, one of the most common things that people tell me when I ask them what frustrates them is, I have too many meetings. Anyone suffer from that?
Yes.
All right, and this is what you do. Suzanne, what is the impact of having too many meetings?
Well, I find myself doing a lot of context switching. Jumping from one task to the other, it takes me a while to get up to speed.
Okay, Mark, what do you think is the impact of having too many meetings?
I don't have any time to get anything done.
Exactly. It means like more creativity. What Suzanne and Mark said, they're annoying, but it's still not an undesirable effect. So then you ask Mark, what is the impact of not having enough time to do any real work?
I don't deliver any value to the customer.
Okay, Suzanne, what do you think of too much context switching? What's the
Yeah.
impact of that?
I think as well, it just made me frustrated and less engaged in my work as well.
Okay, do you think that's an undesirable effect?
I do actually, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so you keep going until you reach the top part, and then that reveals a more fundamental issue. Okay? So, we promise you parachuting cats, and I know some of you came here for this. Take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to play you a very short video now, and I'm going to invite you, while you're watching this video, see if you can identify the undesirable effects that oozes in this video.
In the 1950s, the Dayak people of Borneo, an island in Southeast Asia, were suffering from an outbreak of malaria, so they called the World Health Organization for help. The World Health Organization had a ready-made solution, which was to spray copious amounts of DDT around the island. With the application of DDT, the mosquitoes that carried the malaria were knocked down, and so was the malaria. There were some interesting side effects, though. The first was that the roofs of people's houses began to collapse on their heads. Turns out the DDT not only killed off the malaria-carrying mosquitoes, but it also killed a species of parasitic wasp that can control the population of thatch-eating caterpillars. Thatch being what the roofs of the Dayak people's homes were made from. Without the wasps, the caterpillars multiplied and flourished and began munching their way through the villagers' roofs. That was just the beginning. The DDT affected a lot of the island's other insects, which were eaten by the resident population of small lizards called geckos. The biological half-life of DDT is around 8 years, so animals like geckos do not metabolize it very fast. It stays in their system for a long time. Over time, the geckos began to accumulate pretty high levels of DDT, and while they tolerated the DDT very well, the island's resident cats, which dined on the geckos, did not. The cats ate the geckos, and the DDT contained in the geckos killed the cats. With the cats gone, the island's population of rats came out to play. We all know what happens when rats multiply and flourish. Pretty soon, the Dayak people were back on the phone with the World Health Organization, only this time it wasn't malaria that was the problem. It was the plague and the destruction of their grain stores, both of which were caused by the overpopulation of rats. This time, though, the World Health Organization didn't have a ready-made solution and had to invent one. What did they do? They decided to parachute live cats into Borneo. Operation Cat Drop occurred courtesy of the Royal Air Force and eventually stabilized the situation.
I hope you enjoyed that. And allegedly it did really happen. It is a true story as well. So would anyone like to shout out, what do you think about hoodies are, can you shout out one of the undesirable effects?
Would you like to comment?
Anybody?
No roofs collapsing.
Roofs collapsing. Anything else?
Food shortage.
What was that?
Food
Food
shortage.
shortage. Any others? Disease, the plague. Okay?
Disbalance.
Disbalance. Okay, so I'm going to show you now what Vinnie and I came up with. We found 2 undesirable effects. The first one is that many people are dying from the plague, and the other one is that many people do not have sufficient shelter.
Okay, well, Suzanne, how do I actually know that that's an undesirable effect?
So I've got a few criteria. So first of all, it's got to be negative. It's got to be something that's negative, not just neutral. It's also got to be something that's happening right now. I know this happened in the 1950s, so that's not quite true, but hopefully you'll forgive me for that. But if it's in your organisation, it's happening right now. And also, if I ask that question, what is the impact of that? I can't get any higher. So some of you said that the plague or shortage of food was an undesirable effect. They're actually intermediate effects. Because if I say, what is the impact of that, I'm going to get to one of these higher up effects. So that's always a good question to ask.
And what do we do next then, Suzanne?
So once you've got your undesirable effects, now I wouldn't get over analysing these too much, as long as people resonate with these, as long as there's things that people understand in your organisation, that's a good place to start. The next thing is very similar to the 5 whys. Put your hand up if you've used the 5 whys before. Brilliant, so quite a few of you, so you'll know the technique. You're simply asking why several times, and you're continuing to ask why, and you're continuing to ask what else. So for example, why don't people have sufficient shelter? Well, it's because the roofs of the houses are collapsing, and also people are too sick to be able to fix the roofs. Then you ask, well, why are the roofs of the houses collapsing? Well, it's because the caterpillars are eating the roof. Why are the caterpillars eating the roof? Well, it's because the caterpillar population is increasing, and also caterpillars happen to quite like eating straw. So you keep going like that, asking why and asking why.
And Suzanne, I see that there's a bit of colour going on in Post-its. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this is just something that I made up. It's not an official, constraints thing, but I really like to illustrate with colour. So I've got the undesirable effects are in orange, the intermediate effects are in yellow, and later on you'll see the root causes I've got in red. There are also some in green, and I just like to identify these on the tree as facts of life. So a fact of life, caterpillars like straw, fleas like to bite people. I'm not going to be able to address that, I can't change that, but I still want to show it in my tree, so I make it green just so I know that I'm not going to try to address it.
And if you notice, you'd see some circles there. What are those
Yeah,
circles?
so this
you
is
just
like
drawing.
Yeah, this is like what we know as an ellipse, and you'll see that on some of the arrows. So the arrows are pointing up the way, and that's that cause and effect chain. If I have an ellipse around 2 or more arrows, it represents a logical and that means these 2 things must happen together in order to cause that effect. So in order for people not to have sufficient shelter, the roofs need to be collapsing, and people need to be too sick to actually fix the roofs. If we took one of these things away, the effect would go away. And that's why this ellipse is quite powerful, because we can see that we just need to remove one of the causes to remove the effect of that. So it's quite nice to show this on your current reality tree.
So what do we do next then? What's step 3?
So you continue, you just keep asking why, what else, like you're a small child, until you get to what we know as the root cause. The root cause I often find can be a policy. So in this case, the root cause is that the World Health Organization has a policy to use DDT to eliminate malaria. So once we've got the root cause, we then know what we have to do, what problem we have to address to make lasting change.
And you're probably wondering, how do I know that I've reached my root cause? How do I know I have it, Suzanne?
Yeah, well, I would continue to keep asking why, but if you ever get to the point where you're at something that is completely out of the control of your organisation, then I would say you've gone too far. You can keep going and keep going until you got to the creation of the earth, but there's not anything you can do to change that. So stop at something that's within your influence or control within your organisation.
We've got one more step. Final step.
This is just like testing. If you're a software engineer, you need to validate your tree, and the best way to do that is to read it aloud. I'd recommend reading it aloud from top to bottom, and also from bottom to top. I've often found that I've built a tree and it looks logically sound, and as soon as I read it out aloud to somebody, they find a mistake in it, or I realise there's a mistake. I've maybe said something that's correlation rather than causation. And if you read Linda's talk, you would have heard her talking exactly about that with coffee and Parkinson's disease. So read it out loud. If you're reading it from the bottom, keep saying what the impact of this is, the impact of this is, the impact of this is. And if you're reading it from top to bottom, you're saying the cause of this is, the cause of this is. And it's such a powerful technique, so I would recommend that you do both of these. And just to kind of summarise everything, this is just the very simplified symbology of a current reality tree, much more simple in this picture than it is in the real pictures that I showed you. At the top, you've got your undesirable effects, and then you've got several layers of intermediate effects. These are the things that people normally tell you when you ask them why you're frustrated. And then finally, you get to one or more root causes at the bottom, and you've got your arrows showing that kind of cause and effect chain, and your ellipse showing any logical hands within that. So we just want to finish off a few learnings. Vinnie mentioned that we made mistakes. When I started building a current reality tree, I had no idea what I was doing. I did a lot of stupid things. So I'm going to tell you about some of them. So first of all, I got about 15 people in a room for about a week and a half to build a tree. That was a really, really bad idea. It was very expensive, and it took a long time because everybody argued about everything. So I would recommend starting small, starting with one-to-one, starting with small groups. You can build bits of the tree, and then you can piece it together and validate it with everybody there. Another tip I have, and if you facilitate, you'll already know about this, is use language without blame. We're talking about negative things here, so people will blame themselves, so it's natural, and as a facilitator, you can use language to help prevent that. And then finally, look for themes. If you have one-to-ones with people and they tell you about their frustrations or the probable causes of things, don't just assume they're correct. Try to get multiple people that are seeing the same things, and I call that triangulation if I can get 3 people that tell me the same thing.
And the next one is to please get leadership buy-in. Make sure that you communicate, be open, honest, transparent, live the values. Suzanne once built an unsolicited tree, and it did not go well. The next is, don't worry about being perfect. Don't agonize about it. Just give it a go. Give it a try, and it will come soon. And then we have validating the tree. A lot of people actually miss this step. They don't do it. Read it out loud. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Grammar right, English sound right. And read it aloud with the whole group or with your friend that built the tree. And finally, which is very important, I feel like this is a public service announcement. We all come to conferences and go for training and we leave feeling so great about it, don't we? But it's only as good as if you actually go back and you do something about it, and you test it, and you make it happen.
So yes, you might find on your chair a little cheat sheet. If you don't have one, we've got plenty here. And we've just really summarised this talk on that sheet. We've got an image of what the current reality tree should look like with the symbology there. And we've also got our tips for building a tree. There's also a QR code at the bottom there, so if you go to that, you're able to download all of our material, our slides, a PDF of the cat drop current reality tree. And we also have an online course on Udemy that goes much more in depth into building trees, talking a lot more about our real life experiences, and also what to do before you build a tree, after you build a tree, lots of different techniques. So feel free to take a look at that as well.
I guess that's all from us.
Yeah.
Yeah.